Okay. Welcome to another fantastic show of My Orgasmic Life. I'm your hostess, Gaia Morrissette, and I have she's just so delightful. I'm just so excited to have her on the show and come and play with me. I had the luxury of interviewing her for ticklelife podcast, 2 episodes. We did one all about her early masturbation life as young lass, and then we did a whole episode on how she moved from monogamy to non-monogamy, and that's what we want to talk about today. But she wasn't allowed at Tickle.life's interview to actually go into her brilliant coaching and teaching brain. So I invited her over here to My Orgasmic Life so that we can play together and have conversations and both of us to drop into our teaching mode around the good, the bad, the ugly about monogamy, non-monogamy, jealousy, insecurities, all of the juicy things. So wonderful, fantastic, beautiful, amazing Evita.
Hi, good morning.
So share a little bit about who you are, what you do, before we get into our juicy conversation.
So my name is Evita. Most people know me online as Evita Sawyers, and I am a married bisexual mother of 3 who is non-monogamous. And I started my journey with non-monogamy about 6 or 7 years ago. And it was very challenging for me, unpacking monogamy and, becoming non-monogamous and sort of getting rid of all those things that we carry with ourselves from monogamy. Was really, really hard. And so I was in a lot of Facebook groups and stuff because I was just trying to find community and find resources on how to do this. I really wanted to do it, but it was a struggle. And so I began to talk about those struggles. And at that time, when I was in a lot of the monogamy groups, there was a lot of just, oh, this is so wonderful. This is so great. This is amazing. I feel so much compersion. My partner is with their partner for 3 weeks in cons, and I love it so much. And I was just like, I am not feeling any of this. So I was like, this is not my experience at all. And so I began to talk about that, and it resonated with people. And I really just share the lessons that I've accumulated along the way from my own experiences. But I really sort of kind of began to make it okay for people to kind of talk about the struggles. And it's not roses and cupcakes and rainbows and glitter all the time, but there are some very intense things that we have to experience and go through and work through emotionally in order to show up well for this life and this path that we've chosen. And so
I'm gonna pause you there.
Sure.
So we got kicked out of Facebook again, which is a sign that we're not supposed to play today there. So we're just gonna continue our beautiful conversation, and then everybody can find it on my podcast and on YouTube and all of the other juicy places that.
Yeah, I wonder why it's doing that. That's so
I don't know.
odd.
So it's just right now we adapt. So you might as well.
Absolutely.
So you might as well just shut your laptop off. Let's just drop in. Maybe it's so that you and I can just truly just drop in and be in this moment with each other and not have to worry about questions and externally, and we can just channel whatever it is that we need to talk about.
Excellent. Okay, that's fine. I can do that. So let me turn this off.
Okay. So, yes, tech. We're adapting. Now we're fully present. We're fully aware. We're fully in this moment. All right. So you were talking about how you were transitioning from monogamy to non-monogamy. You were sharing with us about the piece around how you started doing coaching, and the reason behind that was because of that piece of there wasn't having really straight up honest conversations. There was way too much of everything's rainbows and orgasms and orgies.
Yeah, there was. And I mean, there would be different people that would talk about the struggles. And even that was a challenge because I would see people come in and talk about struggling with things. And rather than, them receiving support. And I mean, I understand sometimes when you're coming out of monogamy, like you're bringing a lot of like really like toxic things that come with being monogamous. So like people are asking questions like, is it okay for me to tell my partner to cancel their date with their other partner because I'm feeling away? Which, no, it's not, but it's understandable that someone would think that coming out of monogamy, but people would just get jumped on, and just, so even when people did talk about their struggle, I remember the first time I posted in one of the groups I was in, and I even remember the scenario that I was asking about, because at the time, my husband and I were in a triad, and and we didn't have a large enough bed for all three of us to sleep in. So when she would come over, we would rotate. And so she would sleep on the couch sometimes, my husband would sleep on the couch one time, I'd sleep on the couch, and we would just kind of rotate that out. And I asked the question of, was it okay if like I kind of asked them to keep it down if they were having sex in the room, because it made me uncomfortable to hear it, if I'm out in the room and I'm not involved. And I got like jumped on so badly about just asking that question that I cried, because I was so like hurt by just how the lack of compassion and empathy for this like new person that's struggling with non-monogamy and struggling, with getting, making those changes and those shifts. And so from that, I kind of started being very vocal about my struggles and the different things that I was experiencing. And it really started to resonate with people. And then a lot of the clarity that I received after those struggles and the different, sort of mental narrative rewrites I developed to like change that mental story, that mental monogamy story that just kind of runs, in our brains. And so I would share about those things, and it kind of resonated with people. And then, people kind of started following me. And so I actually do post. I do a post every day called Today's Polyamory Reminder, where I just drop a little like small snippet of advice. And then we did a documentary called Polylove that's on Amazon about that triad at the time. And that really resonated with people because it was a depiction of non-monogamy that wasn't like you said, oh, it's orgies and threesomes and, the guy with his two girls, it was a much more real, depiction of non-monogamous relationships and the challenges that they face. And so through that, I've done a couple podcast interviews. I've done a television interview for a TV show in Ireland with Bo Williams. And so honestly, like I tell people, I just talk a lot. Just talk a lot. And so people kind of
I think for today's conversation, let's have a conversation about the piece about when you're shifting from monogamy to non-monogamy, and the importance of finding the right support during that process. Because I know that when I first moved from monogamy to actually, I'll be full on honest. I've never been monogamous. I moved from ethical non-monogamy to, I moved from unethical non-monogamy to ethical non-monogamy, because I cheated on all of my partners leading up to that. So I've never I never actually truly was monogamous. Yeah. But I remember when I first started starting to realize that I didn't want to move from that cheating perspective, and I wanted to really move into this ethical non-monogamy piece. And so all of a sudden it becoming open, and I fell in love with I was in a relationship with a man who I loved very much, and we were living together. And then I fell in love with this woman, and I didn't know how to tell him or her, and this would be my first relationship with a woman. I had sex with women before, but I'd never had a relationship with a woman. And so, I didn't know what to do. We had no framework. There was no back then. I mean, I'm 45. So that was when I was 19. There was no support. There was no conversation. I didn't even know about the book, The Ethical Slut. I grew up in this very small town. So like there was like nothing. There was like zero support, and all of us were trying to figure it out. None of us knew what the fuck we were doing. They weren't having a relationship with each other. So I was having a relationship with him, living with him. Then I was having a relationship with her, and they would like swap. And they would kind of like tag team each other as they would go. One would come in and one would go out, and they hated each other. Like they hated each other, and I was like in the middle, right? And they're all like, choose. You need to choose one of us. I'm like, but I love both of you equally. You can't love us equally. You have to choose one over the other. And there was no one to talk to. And that journey of not having anybody to talk to, we were all trying to figure it out. And a lot of things happened that didn't need to happen. That if I knew what I know now, back then, things would have been drastically different. And so I think the big piece of that was having somebody to talk to figure that out. Because I remember going to the people in my life that were monogamous, because that's the only framework I had. Those were all the people everywhere. There was no there was no non-monogamous people anywhere, right? Yeah. They were hiding. they were all in the closet.
Hiding in plain sight.
And so I remember talking to my friends about stuff that would come up, like jealousy and insecurities, and like, how do you deal with this? And the answer always was, well, yeah, if you weren't if you were in a monogamous relationship, you wouldn't be dealing with this. So why are you so greedy?
The number one thing is, I don't know why you're doing that in the first place. You know, like, it's like, of course you're having problems. Like, you know, it's like, you know, so it's very invalidating. And a lot of people find it super frustrating. And so one of the things that I like, almost like, it's like almost like number one advice for me, like rule, like, you know, people are like, what do you have like advice for people that are starting up? It's like one of the very first things that I say is build your community. You need to see non-monogamy at work in other people's lives. You need to see non-monogamous representation. You need to see that it can be done, because there are other people that are out there doing it. And you need to have non-monogamous community so that you have a sounding board for the very unique, like I always say, non-monogamy and polyamory is just basic relationship principles on steroids. So it's just basic human relating, but like ramped up.
Oh,
but
hell yeah.
There are very specific non-monogamy things that are very specific to non-monogamy that your monogamous friends, even the most open-minded of them, because I'm lucky and fortunate that most of the people that are monogamous in my life are still just super open-minded people.
Yes.
So like I don't
at this point in my life, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So I don't get that. I don't know why you're doing this in the first place. Like those aren't even the responses that I get, because I have these very open-minded people, but they still don't understand. Like they're just like, their response is more like, I really don't know what to tell you, but I'm here to support you. Like that's kind of the way it is, you know? But if I need like advice, you know, they just don't understand, because it's just not their frame of reference. It's not how they move through a romantic relationship. And so they don't even understand the why of, you know, why do I even want to work this out and figure this very complicated thing out? Because they're like, I don't even understand why you're doing that in the first place, because it doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense to them. So it's extremely, extremely important to build a community of non-monogamous people, even if it's not in person. There's so many online groups. There's so many podcasts now. There's so many forums. And it's super, super, super important, because you're going to need it. You're going to need to see that just to get advice. You're also going to need to see it so that you can believe that it's possible for you. Yeah. Because you see other people doing it.
Yeah. And I also highly recommend also not only just building your tribe, and building your community, but also reaching out and getting some professional support, especially in the beginning stages of negotiation, navigating, you know, what are the, you know, how are you guys going to move with it? What are the boundaries? What are not the boundaries? Like, why do you need those? You know, as you start to heal that, it is like you said, you are moving from one operating system into a brand new operating system.
And you're going to need support.
And you're going to need motherfucking support. Right? It's like, look at it this way. You're moving from one operating. So let's say you move from like, you know, you're moving from, you know, Microsoft, you know, like, you know, a PC to an apple. Okay.
Right.
And that is what it's like. And if you've ever changed that, you spend a lot of time being like, where is that button? How do I do this? How do I do this? And that's exactly what's happening when we move from monogamy to non-monogamy. And you need that support.
Yeah, you're going to need technical support. You are.
Seriously, technical support. One of the other things that I find has been very helpful with my clients is that I teach about conscious monogamy. So it's like a bridge. It's like this bridging of the monogamous mindset to the non-monogamous mindset. So conscious monogamy is acknowledging that we as human beings are not truly monogamous. There's a small percentage of us that are truly monogamous, and true monogamy means that I am only attracted to one person. That's it. I don't find other people attractive. I'm not turned on by anybody. I don't whack off thinking about anybody else. Like, I am just solely 100% attracted to one person.
Yeah, now, like once I lock on to one person, that's it. Like,
that's it forever, right? There's that piece. But that's only a small percentage of the population. Like, that's a truly small percent of the population. The rest of the people who are moving in the monogamous world are actually they're consciously choosing monogamy, meaning that they're pretending that they're monogamous, but they're not actually monogamous. So therefore, there's a lot of jealousy and possessiveness and a whole bunch of stuff that happens. And so what I found is by teaching people to drop into conscious monogamy within their monogamous relationship, we're honoring that, hey, I'm attracted to other people, you're attracted to other people. That's normal. We choose not to act upon it, right? And it kind of is like the baby steps I found as like this baby steps of getting into the concept that me being attracted to somebody else doesn't mean I love you less, or that you're not important to me. And so it gives them like this little playground, this like safety little playground before they jump into the big pool.
Yeah. And see, I didn't get like me and my husband didn't like sit down and have a conversation with one another like, hey, we want to do this. We just found ourselves on all these little, like, this little event here happened and that one here happened and that one here happened. And then boom, like we're in the middle of this, non-monogamous life. So we didn't have that time to do that sort of transitory, like, work beforehand of kind of like wrapping our mind around the concept of, this person being attracted to other people, this person wanting to relate to other people, this person wanting to fall in love with someone else while simultaneously being in love with me. Like, we didn't get that time to sort of wrap our minds around that concept before it was already happening. It was just already happening. Yeah. And so it was a shock. It was a huge shock. Yeah. And I almost envy couples that got that prep time, because we just got like plunked into it. And it was touch and go for a while. It really was.
Yeah, and same with me. Like I didn't have that opportunity. Like I didn't have that opportunity to move and that figure that stuff out, which is part of why I'm like, I think we could create this other little baby step. Give other people like this more success possibility without so much drama. Right? Yeah. So let's talk about like the evil green-eyed monster jealousy that
my old friend. Okay.
yeah. Let's talk about it, because that's really all the pieces and how it like for me anyways, as well as what I've seen with so many people, is that jealousy is the actions. It's the action that people take that make everything go crazy, batshit crazy. It's like it is the thing, right?
It's the number one thing that people express, like immediately when they find out. Like I literally have a Tumblr account, and it's called "Don't You Get Jealous?" because it's like the number one question that I hear when I talk about being non-monogamous, because I'm out to everybody. Yeah. And the number one thing that I hear is, well, don't you get jealous? Don't you get jealous? And so it's like the one thing, it's like that, like you said, that monster that either keep people terrified of it, or like immediately you hear that, I could never do that, I'm too jealous. I could never do that, I'm too jealous. Or people believe that in order to be able to do this, you have to transcend jealousy. So people that do this don't experience jealousy. There's some weird wiring with them that they just don't have it. And I'm always like, I wish. Because me and jealousy are familiar friends, okay? So
yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah, I experienced jealousy not as I still experience it, but it's just far more manageable now. It's not the green-eyed monster that like we've been told that it is. It really is just an emotion. I think that the constructs of monogamy are such that it shields us from experiencing jealousy. So like you're not supposed to experience jealousy in your relationship. And we do things to keep ourselves from feeling it because it is a funky emotion. It's a very funky emotion. So when it hits you, it's very visceral. So you feel it in your stomach. Like, you know what I mean? This is very like, it's like, I always tell people it's like a gut punch. You're like, something happens, the trigger happens, and it's like, ooh, like, you know, you're like, oh, you know, and it's this very uncomfortable feeling. And so we've set up these constructs in monogamy so that we don't experience. So like people, you know, like if say you're in a heterosexual marriage, your husband is not supposed to have female friends, you know, he's not supposed to go to lunch with his female coworker. He's not supposed to keep in contact with his exes. You're not supposed to have male friends. You're not supposed to keep in contact with your exes, you know, and so we do these things so that we don't experience jealousy in our monogamous relationship. And then you get into polyamory. And I liken it to like living in a house with no windows and then going out into the sun. But, you know, and so feeling jealousy for the first time in those relationships, like you're like, oh, like, you know, and it feels so strongly initially because we've gone through life kind of like shielding ourselves from experiencing it and being afraid of this emotion. But when we learn to accept that it's just a human emotion and that we don't need to react to it, it's actually very, very useful tool for self-discovery. So I learn a lot about myself through sitting with my jealousy and going, you know, rather than recoiling from it or running away from it, but sitting in it and kind of going, what are you trying to show me? Like, what are you trying to tell me about myself? What are you trying to tell me about my beliefs about love? What are you trying to tell me about my beliefs about my partner? Like, you know, I tell people I sit down at the table with it and have a cup of coffee. So like now I don't like slam the door and get out of here, jealousy, rah! You know, now I'm like, okay, here you go. Like, all right, come on in. Like, you know, and it's uncomfortable, you know, but I'm like, all right, come in, sit down, because it's very revealing. It's a very revealing emotion.
And for me, it's very interesting that jealousy, I actually, like you were saying, I actually enjoy, and I'm going to say a statement that people are going to be like, what? I actually enjoy jealousy from a perspective that it gives me an opportunity to know where I'm really at. Like what is really happening internally with me. Not the facade, not the, you know, oh, yes, I'm so easygoing, not the whatever, like the truth things that I feel, that I believe, that I'm thinking about, my love paradigms, my relationship paradigms, my self-worth, my body image,
all that. It touches everything.
Everything. And
everything.
It gives me this incredible opportunity to be like, all right, so what do we got? What do we got? We got this opportunity to teachable moment. Let's work through it. Let's figure out. Thanks for telling me what's going on. And that's like the advanced, I feel like that's the advanced level instead of transcending jealousy. Because people talk about, well, because I do know people that don't actually feel jealous. Like they genuinely just don't do jealousy.
I know people like that too. Yeah.
Right? I'm not one of them. I'm incredibly jealous. I'll be straight up honest. And
me too.
Possessive.
Extremely.
I'm totally possessive. Mine. I don't really like to share. The only reason that I deal with that is because I'm non-monogamous. It's my nature. So it's like, well, whatever's good for the goose is good for the gander. So like, otherwise, if I had my way, like if I could just stay in my comfort zone, right? If I could have my ultimate comfort zone choice, right? Everything is like magical and I get to have whatever I want. I get to fuck whoever I want, have relationships with whoever I want.
But you're only with me.
And you're only with me.
that is so real, and that is so me. So like, I'm like, I would have anybody that I wanted. I would do whatever I wanted to people, and everyone would be so enamored with me that there would just be no one else for them. And it would be like this great utopia. And I completely get that. And I totally feel that. And the only reason why I don't do that is because, number one, I just don't believe in taking liberties that you're unwilling to afford. So I realized that it would not be fair for me to like have this edict that I'm going to do what I want, but you can't.
Yeah.
So like I because I value my freedom so heavily, because for me, polyamory, non-monogamy, it's not about more love. For me, it's about freedom. It's about being free to move through people how I want to move with people, how I want to move, and being able to decide for myself who becomes what to me.
Yeah.
And so since I like the maximum amount of freedom available to me, I have to afford the maximum amount of freedom. And so because of that, like I am the way that I am, and this is why I do this. But like you said, if I could like wave a magic wand and have things exactly the way I wanted them to be, to where I like didn't have to grow and didn't have to become a better person, and it was like Vita's utopia world, I would do what I wanted with people, and everybody would be like, "You're just so amazing that there's just no other person in the world for me." And like it would be like everybody would have this myopic focus on me, like, you know.
Yes. But like you, that's the same thing, right? It's like for me, it's not about more love, more sex, more. It's not about the more. It's about the freedom of me having the freedom to choose how I want to play, dance, interact with the people that are around me.
Right.
And so in that, then if I want that, then I must allow and give that same opportunity to the people around me, right? And so that is for me, because I am a jealous, possessive person. Each time there's a moment where I have to work through my shit. Like I got to look at my stuff. I got to like sit with it. I got to hold it. I have to, be like, okay, where do I need to grow? Where do I need to change? What do I need to let go of? What am I afraid of? What am I afraid of losing? Because that's a big piece of it. It's like, what is it? And it gives me this opportunity to grow and heal.
Right. Yeah. I look at it as spaces where, so I tell people all the time that our feelings are just signals. They're signals from our baby selves that are trying to alert us to something, so if we give our feelings their airtime, I read a book once by Thich Nhat Hanh called No Mud, No Lotus. And he said that our feelings are like little children. And when a child or a baby cries, you don't yell at it, you don't hit it, you don't stuff it in a closet and close the door and hope that it just stops crying. You pick it up, you hold it, you soothe it, and then you figure out what's going on with it. Is it cold? Does it need a diaper change? Is it hungry? You know what I mean? Does it just want to be held? And so it's the same thing with our feelings. There's signals from our baby cells that kind of are letting us know that there's an area that needs healing. There's an area within ourselves that needs attention. And then a lot of that has to do with how you were brought up, how you experienced love as a child, like all of these things that were kind of like programmed into us as we were going through life. And so now those things are playing themselves out as we're loving and interacting with others. And I say everybody has an emotional index. We all have an emotional index so there's this huge like range of just human emotion. And we all have an emotional index. And, some of us experience certain emotions in way, 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 way more capacity than others. Some of us don't experience them at all. So like embarrassment and shame are just emotions that I don't experience on a high degree. Whereas like other people, it's super, super high in their emotional index. And it's the same thing with jealousy. So like some people, they're super high in their emotional index. And some people, it's very low or even not at all. Like it's just not an emotion that they experience. And so once I stopped seeing jealousy as like this lower emotion, because you hear that a lot, it's a lower emotion. If you feel jealousy, it's lower. Human beings, we attach high and low on emotions, but emotions are just emotions. They're neutral.
I always like to call them, there's pleasant emotions and unpleasant emotions.
Right. But they're neutral. Like,
but they're neither good or bad. They just, some are easier to be and enjoy more and others not so much.
Others not so much, right, exactly. And so once I kind of stopped looking at it that way and just kind of going, this is an emotion that I experienced, it took a lot of that like negative power to where like once I started feeling it, I started feeling this unease. And then it was like, I got to do something. And once that kind of went away, it it just kind of became an emotion. And then I was like, okay, like I can actually do this. I tell people now, like I make statements like, my husband's on a date and I'm feeling jealous. What's for dinner? Like, because it removed a lot of that. Like, I don't need to react to it. I don't need to do something, because it would hit and it would feel super uncomfortable. And then I'd be like, I need to do something. I need to say something. Like I would, it was that fight or flight. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta move. Once I kind of like learned to just kind of like go, okay, that's a little uncomfortable, but let me move with it. Let me let me kind of sit in it and kind of let it like, settle.
Yeah.
I began to learn a lot of things about myself and a lot of things that because I usually exist in the space of feeling pretty good about myself, really feeling like my self-worth is pretty high. Like I don't really struggle with self-esteem, things of that nature. Not on a constant. So I have my moments because I'm human, but not on a constant, basis. For the most part, I'm a pretty self-assured person in my like normal kind of baseline self. But it lets me know of areas where it's like, oh, you feel that way in this environment, you have an insecurity here, or like, this person is triggering that, even as I age, like I'm noticing that my insecurities change, as I get older, and so it kind of lets me know that there's still work that needs to be done. And I mean, honestly, we never arrive, but there's always still work to be done.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit. I mean, I think it would be really helpful to talk. I mean, we've talked about how we've moved into this other like dance with jealousy. And we've talked about how it kind of felt and stuff like that. But I think I'd really like to share for anybody who's listening what it felt like and what behaviors and where jealousy can take you. And I think that's an important piece. I think that's why so many people are terrified of jealousy, is because of how that emotion, if left unchecked,
Oof.
it can lead to killing somebody. That's why they have, murder in the state of rage or out of jealousy, right? Like there is this whole piece that if left unchecked, the crazy level of shit that can go down is insane.
I have done some stuff, okay? Like, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, and I tell people that all the time because, and I'm sure you experience this too, people kind of place you on this pedestal or like this guru. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, you're speaking and you're teaching about these things. So clearly you don't have these experiences, like this doesn't happen to you. And I'm like, oh no, like, you know what I mean? Like, no. So like, I remember when we were in the triad, and the triad really pinged on my jealousy a lot because our partner at the time, if you took every personal insecurity that I had about myself and created a person, it would look like her. Like, I mean, like to the letter. Like I was just like, it was literally like walking around with like my personal insecurity monster. Like, you know what I mean? Like just hitting them. Every chick, ping, just poking them, all the time. And so I would rip up and at the time, my partner, my husband used condoms with me, didn't use condoms with me, but he used condoms with her. I would rip his condoms up. I'd go in the room and I'd rip them all up, and I was feeling jealous. I threw an iPad at him. When I was upset, I hit a wax warmer through a window. I remember because I never forget it. He went to Walmart one night to get us both dinner and came back home with a date. He met some chick at Walmart. They started talking. They exchanged phone numbers, and he had a date the next day. And right before that, he had told us, because at the time we were in the triad, and he had told us that he wasn't open to anybody. He was like, oh, I'm good. I got enough with you two. I'm not open to anybody. And then like he comes home with a date. My husband's good for that. A lot. It's so frustrating. Like I call it the sharp left turn. So he's real good for the sharp left turn, and like excellent for the sharp left turn. And it blindsides you, and you're like, so he comes back with this date, and I'm all like, freaking out about it, and she's freaking out about it. And so I got home from work on Monday. He went on the date with the woman on Sunday. I got home on Monday, and like I literally had to deal with her emotions and my emotions about it, and it was just a lot. And stepped in the door, and the second I stepped in the door, the woman called him on the phone, like the minute I walked in the door. And I was like, I don't even get a chance to get home and like talk to my husband after all this crap is going on, because here this chick is, she's calling him. And so I go in my room, and what I tell people is at that time, because I actually enrolled myself in an anger management group therapy after this after this incident. But I walked into my room, and when I get mad like that, and I feel that, that anger, it's a surge, and I need to discharge that energy. So I don't want to hit people. Like, that's not something that, and I grew up in a very abusive home, but I never want to hit people. Like, that's not something that crosses my mind, but I need to hit something, you know what I mean? So I need to hit a pillow. I need to do a boxing class. Like, I got to get that energy out, you know?
Yeah.
And so I go in my room, and there's this wax warmer on my dresser, and I went, rah! And I swiped the wax warmer, but I had terrible aim. And I hit it through the window. $120 to fix it. Okay, so now I'm costing us money. My anger is actually costing us money. And so after that incident, I actually enrolled myself in an anger management group therapy, and I went for about 6 months. And what I learned through that experience is my default response to pain is anger. So when I feel pain, and I notice that when I say I stub my toe, I'm not like, oh, my foot hurts. I'm immediately like, fuck, that's why, like my default response to pain is anger. And so now that I know that about myself, I'm aware. I was like, I really gotta deal with this. I have to like figure this out, because I was really doing some very, very, very just unhealthy, super kind of scary, like abusive stuff because of my background. And a lot of people, respond. And even when I went and sat for the intake, because before you did the group therapy, you had to do an intake with the therapist to kind of see what they felt you needed.
Yeah.
And I told the therapist, I was like, I'm polyamorous, I'm non-monogamous, I'm in a non-monogamous relationship, and I do not want to be advised to end it, because that's not the problem. So a lot of people want to say, well, why don't you just stop being polyamorous? Because clearly being polyamorous is the problem. And I'm like, no. I said, if anything, I'm thankful to polyamory for showing me that about myself, because I don't want there to be any situation that causes me to act that way.
Yeah.
It's a me problem. It's not a polyamory problem. It's a me problem. That's something that I needed to work on and I needed to fix. And polyamory just revealed that to me, is that this was inside of me and I needed to work on it. So yeah, I've done some pretty out there stuff, like, in the throes of jealousy, because I was just freaking out and feeling threatened. And that fight or flight had kicked in, and my response to that is to fight. Yeah.
And so in full disclosure, you shared my turn. I'll share those places where I'm
Yay!
like, I'm not all like shiny. So this actually happened. This jealousy moment was actually when I was in a monogamous relationship. So this jealousy can exist, monogamy or non-monogamy. It still exists across the board. Just so that we're aware of that. So I'm dating my boyfriend. He lies to me. He's supposed to come over for dinner. I go over to his place. I'm waiting for him. I'm fuming, right? Because he's like stood me up, and I made this beautiful dinner for him, and I'm waiting. So I'm already at my peak of anger. Like, I'm already beyond. I've gone from anger to rage to like my whole body's shaking, right?
Like blackout, like
almost blackout. Okay.
Yeah.
So he shows up at his house drunk, and I'm at the top of the stairs, and he has some girl with him that he starts making out with. He doesn't know I'm at the top of the stairs.
Oh no.
And I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now? So I was already at the rage stage about being stood up. Now I've been stood up because with some other girl that he's making out with, and we don't have an open relationship. So that sets the stage. So anyways, he looks up and sees me when I start yelling, and I'm like, that's fucking it. You're a piece of shit. I'm leaving you, blah, blah, blah. I'm yelling at him. He's like, whatever, bitch. And he like walks past me, pushes me out of the way. And the girl, instead of the girl being like, this is a good time for me to opt out. No, she follows him up the stairs, and I'm standing there and I'm yelling at him, and he slams the door in my face. Apartment. I'm like, oh no. I don't even know what came over me. This wave of pure adrenaline and rage and entitlement and all this stuff. And one kick, I kicked down the door. It was like this scene out of an action movie, right?
So let me pause right here. Even though like this is not healthy behavior and I would never encourage anybody to do this. And like, you know, I know that you're telling this story because it's like, you know, cautionary tales. Yeah. The fact that you kick the door in is low key kind of hot. Like I don't know if it's the strength or just like, I just like seeing women being in that like, kind of like state. But I was like, it's kind of sexy though. Like not the why you were doing it, but the actual that you had the strength to be able to do it. Like it's kind of hot. But anyways, okay, so go ahead.
Okay, all right. So yes, this is a cautionary tale.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't do this. And I looked absolutely stunningly hot in my power, rage, goddess energy. Okay, so I kicked the door down. One kick, right? And at this point, my best friend knew that he came to find me because he's like, oh, this is not going to go well, right? My best friend comes to follow me. So I kicked the door down. My boyfriend at the time, he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, you fucking piece of shit. And I'm swearing and I'm yelling and I'm all this stuff. And I'm gathering all of my stuff out of his place, right? I'm like, it's over. And I'm so mad. And I'm so like enraged. And I'm so jealous in this moment that I'm like, fuck you, you're going to pay. And he had he'd worked overtime and saved all this money and bought this huge, big screen TV. And I pick up the beer bottle and I'm like, fuck you. And I just throw it at the television. It shatters the television.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I feel better. Like it was like in that moment, I was like, I have my revenge. Okay, I'm good. Like I'm out of here, right? So I'm starting to leave because I know that like this is like I've pushed the limits now. Like I'm gonna get hit. Like there's no way of me avoiding getting hit after that. So I'm like I'm beelining it for the door. As I beeline it for the door, the woman grabs me. She's like, "You're not going anywhere," and I'm like, "Oh yes, I am." And my best friend squishes me in between them. So I'm between this woman and my best friend, and my best friend's trying to get her to let go of me. And at the meantime, my boyfriend is now coming at me. And I'm like, this is going to be very violent if I don't get out of this situation. So I'm like, you know, I'm yelling at the woman. I'm like, let go of me, blah, blah, blah. Of course, I'm, you know, calling her all sorts of names that are not, you know, feminist approved. And
right. Not honoring the sisterhood.
Not honoring the sisterhood at any level in that moment. And he's coming at me and I go to kick him. But I can't get my leg high enough and I end up hoofing him as hard as I can because I knew he had a rib injury. So I was like, of all the places to like take him out, I needed to kick him in the ribs, right? So I'm trying to get my leg up, but I can't because I'm being sandwiched between these two people. So I end up accidentally, not with intent, kicking him in the balls. He goes down and I'm like, I know. And this is all because of jealousy. Right? Like, so he goes down and I'm like, and now I'm like, if he gets up, I'm dead. Like this is more than just like, if he comes back at me, I'm dead. Like I'm not getting out of this in one piece. And she won't let go of me. So I headbutt her backwards, break her nose, she's bleeding all over the place.
Oh my God, this story. Like, this story, it's not great, but it just keeps getting more. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Exactly. And that's the point. That's the point
right.
of jealousy and going into that rage place. There's a sense of entitlement. There's a sense of justification. There's a sense of violence. And then once you're in violence, this is the problem. Once you're in violence, you have to go into survival mode because the other person's going to retaliate. And so now you're at a whole new level, right?
It becomes a negative feedback loop until somebody stops it. And it just drops and drops and drops and and descend and it's descend until someone says, okay, enough. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So at that point, she releases me. I grab my best friend. I'm like, we're out of here. And we run out. I get away. But then that crash that happened landed me in the hospital.
Wow.
Because of the level of adrenaline and the level of cortisone and the level of things that were spiked in that emotional reaction that I just experienced, that I couldn't stop vomiting, I couldn't stop shaking. I landed me in the hospital. And as I was laying in the hospital bed, I said to myself, never, ever, ever again will I allow another human being to affect me on an emotional level that I am not okay with who I am and my behavior, and I am not okay with my behavior. But it wasn't in the moment. If you were to ask me in that moment, I'd be like, oh yeah, I was totally justified. Like
right.
he totally earned that. He totally deserved that. No, that's
and
abusive behavior.
There are people that would say that.
Yeah.
There were people that would absolutely say that. They would say, he was cheating on you. He stood you up, blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, there were people that would say that. And while that is valid, you know, not that you being justified, but yeah, he was absolutely in the wrong. But you still choose how you show up to it, and your behavior should be about you. Because when you give the power to affect how you show up to outside people, you're always going to be swayed. You're always going to be knocked off your seat because you're outsourcing your power to how you show up to external forces and things outside of you, which you have no control over. You had no control over that guy cheating on you. You had no control over that happening, but you did have control over yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely control over myself, but I didn't think I did, and I didn't know that I did. And I think, and that's the piece that I want to tie in with this story, is that's why it's so important to manage jealousy, to own jealousy, to lean in with jealousy, because the first thing jealousy will kick into your brain is a justification, and it's someone else's fault. And that is the scary part of jealousy. When you can see that and you know that, and you can be like, oh, jealousy. No, it's not anybody else's fault. And no, I'm not justified to slash somebody's tires or whatever it is that you seem to think is going to be your justification to make you feel better. No. And if you can stop that piece, then it makes it easier to do what we've been talking about. Invite it over for tea, to sit down with it, to figure out what's underneath it, to do all those pieces. But if you don't catch that piece, if you allow yourself to drop into the justification of I am justified to do harm and it's somebody else's fault, those two pieces are incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, when I would get into that space, I would tell people, so when I went to anger management, what it says is that what it helps you to do, and that's what it did, is create a gap between the trigger and your response. So before that, the trigger would happen and I would immediately respond. And I didn't create a gap in that between the trigger and the actual response, to where I can go, okay, this is what I'm telling myself to do, but is that really what I want to do? Like, you know what I mean? Is that a good idea? And so like, you have to learn how to, and I would have these moments where I would tell people, I would be in my head saying to myself, Vita, you're tripping. Vita, like, this is way too turned up a response. Like, you're overreacting. But I couldn't get through to myself. So it was almost like I was trapped inside of myself, and I like can't get through to myself and like stop myself, because I just immersed myself in it. I took the plunge. Yeah. And if you can create that gap between the trigger and you responding, and kind of sit in that little gap space and just go, okay, like, you know, so this is what's happening and this is my trigger response to it, but is that who I want to be? Is that how I want to respond? Is that what I want to do? Do I want to inflict this damage on this situation? If you can get in that little gap space and kind of sit for a little bit, a lot of times our initial responses to things aren't really like how we actually really want to show up.
Oh yeah. And, you know, and so that's a perfect segue into, okay, that takes some mastery. That takes like some serious mastery and learning and support to learn how to recognize your triggers, create the gap, how to respond. Like that's important piece, but there needs to be support in that. And I lovingly invite you to, really reach out, whether it's to me, whether it's to Evita, whether it's to both of us, or whether it's to somebody who's like us that you resonate with. But you really do want to have that support in teaching you how to manage that trigger, how to manage your emotions, how to dance with your emotions so that you don't react. You can choose how you're going to respond. And then you don't do damage to yourself or others or property or anything around you, right? So that, I would say, is really, 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 really crucial. When you drop into this world, unless you happen to be one of those people who, they just don't feel jealousy and they just don't, that's not their thing. If you're one of those people, then, you may need support in other ways of how to negotiate your relationship and navigate that. But everybody else, jealousy is a big part. And jealousy is a big part. Like I said, I told this story when I was in a monogamous relationship.
Right.
And that was as fucking dark, as violent as I got. Yeah. I went into non-monogamy for years, and, I have little snippets of jealousy, but never, ever have I ever felt that kind of rage that I did then.
Yeah.
So how can people spend more time with you?
Like I said, on Facebook, I'm Evita Sawyers, and on that page, I do a lot of sharing of just things about polyamory, non-monogamy. I share links, relationship, photos. I have conversations about relationships and how to conduct these relationships well. I also do today's polyamory reminders. So every day I just drop a little snippet of wisdom. And then you can also book coaching sessions with me through that platform. And then on Instagram, I'm Evita 34, and I do the same thing on Instagram and kind of talk about non-monogamy and kind of expound a little bit more on the reminders. I just developed a Patreon, so I will be launching that soon. So that way people can get a little bit more, because I dropped the little like reminders, but I don't really expound on them. And these things are so broad. So like you can say a little thing about it, but you can talk about that little thing for 20, 30 minutes, and pull all these little pieces into it. And so on the Patreon, I'll be going a little bit more in detail into why that's the reminder and, drawing from my life experiences. And, because most of those reminders are just me talking to myself and reminding myself, okay, Vita, you got to remember this. You need to remember this. You need to remember this. Yeah. So, and I'll be discussing like the why. So like why this is a reminder that I came up with. What was the situation that brought this forward for me? Most people find those very helpful, because it's one thing for me to say, this is a thing that you need to learn, but it's like, this is how I learned that lesson, so that it kind of humanizes you. You know what I mean? Like you said, you told the story about jealousy. It kind of humanizes you. It's like, oh, this person was never in that place. It's like, no, I was absolutely sitting in the same seat you are, and currently am, and still find myself in that place. But my responses to these things are different now. I don't have the same, I've developed the tools to navigate these things in much more healthy ways. And I like sharing that knowledge. So like I said, Evita Sawyers on Facebook, Evita 34 on Instagram. And then, go to my pages where I'll be posting the links for the Patreon and stuff. And so that way you can receive more support.
Beautiful. And all of those pieces will be in the show notes so that you can easily just click on them. You don't even have to work at it. Right? To spend more time with me, you can visit me at succulentliving.com for all of your BDSM needs. You can visit me at empressgaia.com. Don't forget to follow me on social media under Gaia Morrissette or Empress Gaia, or both. And I lovingly invite you to make sure that you download my app. I have an app for my podcast, and you can get it at Google Play Store. So you can have me with you all the time, everywhere you go.
Shoot, I'm gonna download it. Does Apple have it too?
I
Or is it
think
just Google?
I don't know. I don't know if Apple has it. I know that Google has it. And or if you can also listen to me on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your music, I'll be on there. So you can have me all the time. And then what else do I? Oh, today's episode was brought to you by tickle.life. And I think those are all the things. So, if you want, this is something I always forget to talk about. So I have all these fantastic online courses that are spectacular, that will change your life. And I happen to have a whole series on relationships, relationship deep dives, to conscious monogamy, to navigating ethical non-monogamy. So I kind of take you through the whole thing so that you don't have to be like, what the fuck am I doing? So if you want those, that'll be in the show notes as well. All right.
Excellent.
Love you. Thank you so much for listening to us. And thank you, Evita, for hanging out.
I know. Always a great time when we get together. I really enjoy it.
It was so good. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.